Hat, sunglasses, Pepsi, notes, sources, thick skin, check. You already know. Let's go. Golden Blooded is a college football YouTube channel for entertainment. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get into our next college football video. Don't forget to send gear to represent your team. The address is P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina 29657. Make sure to keep the comments coming because remember, if you leave a video idea in the comments section, I'm liable to use that video idea. It is helping me tremendously with off-season content. Now, I could do it myself and keep it going. This is my third off season that I've done with my YouTube channel. But having to think of ideas can sometimes be stressful. So keep the comments coming and I greatly appreciate it. Today's video idea comes from Nick Kelso. This is a good one. Here's what he has to say. Video idea. Double conference implosion. I could just stop right there. I love it. I love it. But let's keep reading. First, the PAC falls apart due to UO, Oregon, and Washington refusing to sign a strong Gore grant of rights, which in turn causes a PAC TV contract significantly less than the Big 12. Second, after the round of PAC musical chains, I'm assuming he means chairs, ends and all teams are settled, lean on peak around the corners, hinted assumption that FSU finds a way to break the ACC Gore. At this point, both the SEC and the Big 10 would add ACC schools, while the Big 12 scoops up the valuable leftovers for a true 4-time zone conference. I love it. I love it. I love it. You've basically taken all the conference realignment videos that I've done and just kind of put it all into one. And so I want to do this video. This is a great video idea. I think it's very, very possible because we are looking at the SEC and the Big Ten. They're going to be fine no matter what. We're trying to figure out who's going to survive with them. I do not think that all 5 Power 5 conferences will survive. In fact, I don't think 4 of the current Power 5 conferences will survive. I think it will come down to 3. So right now, the Pac-12, the Big 12, and the ACC need to be thinking of moves that they can make in order to survive. They need to be trying to put each other out of business. I think Brett Yormark, the commissioner for the Big 12, is doing that exactly. We already know that the Big 12 has been interested in 3/4 of the 4 corner schools. Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. Now, I haven't heard anything recently, but I'm sure there's still some type of interest between those two parties. So in this scenario, the Big 12 would be that third conference. And I think this is laid out quite clearly. Now, I'm not sure about the beginning of this where he says that Oregon and Washington refuse to sign a strong Gore. Although that could happen. That could happen. I do think that Oregon and Washington want partial revenue share, grabbing the majority over the other teams. Hey, if you want us to stay, you have to give us more money. I do think that that's going to happen. And that's why I think that Washington and Oregon could actually be the last teams that actually decide to leave the Pac-12 because they're making more money than everybody else. Everybody else is probably going to be angry at Oregon and Washington for making more money than they make. And that's what prompts them to say, hey, screw this. We're going to go off to either the Big 10 or the Big 12. So for the Big 10, we already know that UCLA and USC, they are on the way from the Pac-12. And I've changed my mind. I thought that there for a while that Oregon and Washington could be the next domino that falls for the Big 10. I have changed my mind and I am holding firm on it. I think the next go around, the Big 10 will grab Cal and Stanford out of the Pac-12. They fit in perfectly. They bring in a buttload of money when it comes to research and academics. So yes, they are a draw for the Big Ten, and they would fit in perfectly. And on top of that, scheduling for USC and UCLA. Remember, they're all the way out there in California, and their road games are going to be across half the United States, sometimes all the way across the United States when you're talking about a Penn State, a Rutgers, and a Maryland. So you add Cal and Stanford, that helps ease the travel burdens for USC and UCLA, and plus these two schools fit in perfectly with the Big Ten, and they would bring a lot of money with them. I'm telling you, I truly think that is the next step for the Big Ten. It's a no-brainer, to be honest with you. No offense, Oregon and Washington. That's probably why they turned you down, to be honest with you. Next up, and I've done a video on this step by step, but I'll still have to do this to get to my point of Pac-12 and the ACC imploding together. And all that remains is the SEC, the Big 10, and the Big 12. So next up, I do think that Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado jump from the Pac-12 to the Big 12. And it's because of what I mentioned earlier. Washington and Oregon want an unequal revenue share. They want more money from this new TV contract than anybody else. I don't know what the exact percentage cut. It could be as high as 20% depending on how much the other teams would get. but they would get far and away a higher share or higher percentage of this TV deal than all the other teams. So these other 4 teams, they jumped to the Big 12. They're like, no, we're not good with that. We are not good with that. We're going to jump over to the Big 12 where we're going to make more money and not be disrespected. This could come down to disrespect. These 4 schools out of the 3/4 of the 4 corners just might feel disrespected, and they had enough. They're like, no, we're gone off to the Big 12. And that's how this next phase of realignment goes. And then finally, Oregon and Washington look around. Man, it's just us and Oregon State and Washington State. This is not going to work out because if the Pac-12 doesn't pick up some members, they have to disband. And we do not want to play with those Mountain West schools. Okay. We're not getting into the Big 10. Let's go to the Big 12, I guess, because that's our only option. And guess who's waiting for them? Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado shaking their heads going, yep. It's all because of you. That's why the Pac-12 went down. But at the same time as all this is happening, all right, try to keep that in your head. Even though I explained this round by round, just like I did yesterday, keep in mind that what I'm about to say happens at the same exact time. That's why it's 2 conferences imploding at the same time. I'm talking about the ACC. Those 8 teams rumored needed to vote down the ACC grant of rights exist, and they finally vote to dissolve the ACC. So the grant of rights go away, and the teams in the ACC start to scatter. Who goes where? Well, I think the Big 10 grabs North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, and Georgia Tech. All 4 of these schools have AAU status. North Carolina, a strong draw. In fact, I do think that it could turn into a conference bidding war as far as the Big 10 wanting North Carolina and the SEC also wanting North Carolina. I think eventually the AAU status will win out and the Big 10 will just have a little bit more money for North Carolina and Duke because Duke will tag along. That's a solid footprint in the state of North Carolina. To go along with that, Virginia. Virginia is a decent rival of North Carolina, so North Carolina would be bringing in both Duke and Virginia, and that's a solid footprint in the state of Virginia. And also Georgia Tech. That's a little farther south, but hey, you just went out and got USC and UCLA. Why not? Why not get those 4 teams? And the Big 10 grabs a coast-to-coast conference with that, and Georgia Tech also has strong academics. They are a draw for the Big 10. So who does the SEC get? Well, they get Clemson, Florida State, Virginia Tech, and NC State. And I know Virginia Tech is trying to get AAU status, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized even that, I don't think that would be good enough to draw the attention of the Big 10. They would rather have Virginia, and once you have one school in the state of Virginia, you really don't need the other school. I know the exception is Duke with North Carolina. They're just a tag-along. It is what it is. I'm sure the Big 10 would prefer getting somebody else over Duke, although Duke has massive value. I will say that. Duke does have massive value. They will pull their own weight as far as drawing in money for the Big 10. That's the argument for Duke. But for Virginia Tech, not needed to the Big 10, so the SEC will take them. Virginia Tech is a strong enough brand for the SEC. They will make money for the SEC. And finally, NC State. It gets them a solid footprint in the state of North Carolina. Since they didn't get North Carolina or Duke, NC State would be the next brand to get. And I know I'm going to hear, no, the SEC gets whoever they want. If the SEC wants North Carolina, the SEC is going to get North Carolina. They're not going to take second best. This is a different scenario, okay? I'm not saying that the Big 10 is a better conference, so they'll get their picks first. I'm just saying whenever it comes to the North Carolina battle, I do think that the Big 10 will win that particular battle. But the SEC getting Clemson and Florida State, that is a major, major get for the SEC. Big-time money makers, and I think they will fit in quite nicely for the SEC. So that brings us to the Big 12. They get the leftovers, but these leftovers fit in quite nicely with the Big 12. So the Big 12 could get Pitt, Louisville, Syracuse, and the Miami Hurricanes. Of course, the Miami Hurricanes, a perfect travel partner for UCF because they are down there on an island, or I should say a peninsula because Florida is a peninsula. Point is, they are separated from everybody else. You bring in Miami Hurricanes, and there's a travel partner for them. And then, of course, these other 3 teams, Pitt, Louisville, Syracuse, no-brainer. Lots of rivalries between these 3 teams and these 3 teams and West Virginia and Cincinnati. So 5 schools that have rivalries with each other. We make a lot of money for the Big 12, and it strengthens the Big 12 on the east side. Listen, the Big 12 is looking to strengthen themselves on the west side. They better strengthen themselves on the east side as well because those east teams are not going to be happy about that. Especially yours truly, a West Virginia fan, Gold and Blue Dude. So y'all in the comments section, do you think this could happen? Do you think that the ACC and the Pac-12 could implode at the same time? And if it does happen, Do you think this is how it happens? Or is there another way that you could see it happening? Leave it in the comments section and I just might do a video on it. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.